Let me. Where do I find the shared screen thing?
At the bottom of your screen.
Okay, I see it.
And Jonathan needs to stop share screen.
Okay, I am. Let me do that.
This is a mess.
Oh, sorry, I am gonna. Okay. Did I stop sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I figure at this point in the week, everybody in the group has had enough of the fall statistics and how concerned we all should be about falls. So I like to, with home modifications, take a belt and suspenders approach. We like to prevent falls.
Karla,
But,
your share screen is not on.
Oh, it isn't. Okay. Let me. Is voice coming through okay?
Yeah, voice is fine. Little
Okay.
green button in the middle of the bottom of the screen.
I can't get back to where I've got a shared screen option. Let me try this. Okay.
That's it.
Is it on now? Okay. All right, great. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so you've got my whole screen on the thing now.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we're going to take a belt and suspenders approach with this topic. We like to prevent falls if we can, but be prepared for them if they do happen. And there are, as you've learned from other speakers you've had, there are many reasons for slips, trips, and falls. There are a lot of individual and personal reasons. Age, of course, is one. Health is another, your functional status. And then a really overlooked one, I think, is our adaptive behaviors. We get used to hurrying and using step stools and clutter and footwear. So I'm going to let somebody else take those in your week, but we're going to focus on the home risk factors and the structure and materials around the home. How do we know where to start with home modifications? I always like to start with data. And
Karla, I'm sorry to interrupt
That's
again.
okay.
Could you clean off things on your screen? I think you have a list of people. Can you close that? Go to the line.
Okay.
That,
Thank
yes.
you.
And then also the setup professional audio. X that's in the middle. In the middle of your screen, not that.
Oh man, all I have on my, oh, I see, I'm sorry. Okay, how's that?
Great, thank you.
Are we getting there? Okay. Okay. This is where are we all on sync now?
That looks good, thank you.
Okay. So I like to figure out where we need to start, and a good place is the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They keep track of all the products that we have in our world and how many times adults over 65 are admitted to the emergency department. And that's what this slide is. And you can see that floors and flooring material come out way ahead of other products that are in the home, particularly for older adults. Another source is AARP. They also found that floors and flooring are the #1 factor in a home, and stairs and steps are the second one down. But floors and flooring are very important for our age group for fall prevention and protection. What I also find interesting is when you ask people what things they've done in their homes to make them safe if they're over 65, you'll see that grab bars and handrails are at the top, and then we move to doors, fix their bathroom, and I won't read it, but floors are nowhere on this list. Nobody even thinks about floors and flooring as a fall prevention strategy. So those of you who've had my classes from me before know that I like to have quizzes. So we're going to have a quiz, and hopefully the rest of my presentation, you'll be able to answer these 5 questions about the importance of these different items in a fall prevention strategy around your house. So we're going to talk about floors. We like to have the subfloor prepared so that it's firm, any cracks are gone, old flooring is gone, level entrances between different parts of the home. And also if anybody has flooring grates in their floor, that those are running in the direction of the in the opposite direction of foot traffic. And having continuous floors is very important for a fall reduction strategy. We like to see flooring consistent throughout, elevate elevation changes. That would be things like grout line, any transition strips. Like to see color used to highlight changes if there are changes in the flooring material or tripping hazards. Should avoid glare and keep the floors in good repair. So here's a top and bottom example. The top one is kind of what you usually see in most homes. Over time, people have replaced, just individual rooms and things that connect to the hallway. The bottom slide shows continuous flooring, also shows how the flooring contrasts with the door jambs, how all of the things selected here are basically designed to provide contrast, which give your brain information about where you are in a space and what you need to do with your feet. And so the fewer transitions we have, fewer changes, the better off our flooring choices are. So we're going to talk a bit about flooring materials. The first one I like to cover is solid surface materials. Those are different things that come in sheets or tile, stone, bamboo, cork. They are low maintenance and have a firm surface, but they're also very hard when people fall. And it's very important to get the installation details right. And I'm basically what's called a specifier. So when somebody has an idea of flooring for me to look at, I look at making sure that it's not too much glare, that it has some slip resistance, that it's not too bold and distracting. On the slip resistance, some flooring manufacturers are starting to put what they call a COF, or coefficient of friction. So when you go to the flooring store, if you look on the back of things, you will see a wet and dry COF rating. And these are the figures that you're looking for. And throughout my PowerPoint, I hopefully provided you with some things that you can turn into actionable things, like when you're buying flooring. The one thing, a lot of people like tile. It is not recommended for most aging in place flooring installations. But a lot of people use it. So if you install tile, it's better to have small tiles, narrow grout lines, and install the grout lines diagonally to the direction of travel. Carpet is another soft surface flooring material. It feels good on our feet. It does cushion falls and minimizes injuries. It's also very high maintenance, and a lot of people like that sculptured or contour pile, which creates an uneven walking surface, or that really plush feel that we like is a real hazard, because when your foot is in it, you're creating an indentation, which is basically a tripping hazard. And if you ever have to use wheel mobility equipment like ramps or wheelchairs, the wheels are going to sink right in there, create resistance, and be a problem. So if you go with carpeting, here are some tips to look for. You look for level loop. You want about a 1/2 inch pile, tightly woven. And if you can get your installer to do this, have them put the carpet pad directly on the subfloor. That will help prevent buckling and tearing and make it a much more compatible surface. So the next thing most people are going to know that or think that rugs are not a part of a fall prevention strategy, but there are some examples, especially here in Alaska with our walk-off mats. They're really good. They keep the ice and snow off your feet. And so you're not trucking in wetness and a potential fall hazard. So if you do use a walk-off mat or rugs, here's some specifications at the bottom. You want a tightly woven nap on it. You want to make sure it has a slip-resistant backing, that the edges are beveled and not just an abrupt squared off edge. And you need to have it large enough so that at least a couple of footsteps will make contact with it and help whip that water off. And then, like with all flooring, keep it in good repair, make sure it's not frayed, curled, ripped, or torn. So the next thing that showed up on the charts as a hazard is stairs and steps. There's lots of features with stairs and step design, like handrails, lighting, the edge. So we're going to go through some of the ones that are quite important. And the rest of these, obviously handrails is at the top of this list, but we'll start with stair safety. I hope this is not like anybody's stairs who's on our in our class today. Lots of problems here, and I hope everybody's got a safer set of stairs to go down. So the main components for stairs are the treads, which are the part that the foot goes on, and the risers, which are the, can people see my cursor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the risers and these are the treads. And this little area right in here is the nose. So we're going to talk about those. Most building codes look for 11 inches minimum for your tread. There's a lot of research out there for heart healthy stairs for older adults. You want that tread about 12 inches or wider if your stair configuration will do it. And stairs, the treads need to be about 36 to 48 inches. That's so that people can pass or you can reach both sides of the handrails. And the treads obviously need to be uniform, stable, and secure. So the risers need, again, building codes usually go to 7 inches. That would be, they can go this high. For older adults, it's really better if they're closer to 6 inches. You don't have to lift your leg as far. And it's also important that these be closed. That example that I showed here has open risers. If you can see my cursor, see all that space in there? Those are open risers. We like to get rid of those. For a couple of reasons. A lot of people who are older will actually slide the tip up of their foot up the riser and feel the stairs as it goes on to the step. So the closed riser prevents feet from slipping through the crack. Slipping through the cracks. And also, it's very important that the riser height be uniform. If you have a carpenter who is in a hurry, it's very typical for them to make the riser shorter or longer at the top and bottom so that it all comes out. And that's when you analyze stairs, the trip and fall usually happens at the top or bottom for that very reason. We want the nosings on the tread to be nosings in this area, not to have what's called a bull nose and stick out here, because that pushes the foot back when that, as people, you can catch your toe on it and kick the foot back. So we want handrails on both sides of the stairs, and they can go inside stairways, halls, walls, outside stairs, decks, landings. Common thing that I find is that people don't know the importance of round handrails. The way to see if a handrail is appropriate for you, make sure that your hand completely circles the rail so that your thumb and fingertips meet together and completely go around the handrail. The lengths of the handrail should be continuous and uninterrupted, and they should extend 1 or 2 feet onto the top or bottom landing. And it's also important that the ends return to the wall so that they're not open-ended, so you could slip off or your clothing could get caught in them. The brackets need to be about 1.5 inches from the wall. They need to be attractive. This example here is a case where there is no contrast between the handrail and the wall, and in low light, they would be very difficult for a person to see if they needed them in an emergency. Next thing we're going to talk a little bit about, because everybody fixes that, is the grab bars. They can be done a number of different ways, vertically, diagonally, or horizontally at a number of places, and also in toilets. At the senior center, we've been actually putting a lot of these, you can see my cursor again, these behind the wall toilets, toilet grab bars, they drop down. And if we don't have walls to anchor them on, that's what we're doing. In fact, here's a good example here. This is a drop down grab bar. And when we don't have the right structure behind the wall, they're a really good solution. They need to be 1.5 inches from the wall, fastened securely, be functional, low maintenance. And inside you want good powder coated surface, something that gives you good grip. Outside you want something that's low maintenance so you can avoid wood. One of the main things with fall prevention I'm finding is that we just need to do better lights and lighting. It's a very inexpensive way to change out a light bulb, and you just would be amazed at what a difference it makes on this to have good lighting. And here's an example of just some reflective tape that's used to highlight the flooring, the molding around the bottom. So that at night, if people get up to go to the bathroom, they have pretty good contrast and for orientation, and don't run into walls or trip on something. So here's some more information that you will have when we distribute the PowerPoint, some links to some statewide and national sources for finding out more, specifically home modification that are related to fall, home modification information related to fall prevention. And the answer to the quiz that we started with is flooring is more important than grab bars, as we've learned. Wall paint color can be part of the contrast. Stairs with open vertical risers are more likely to cause falls. Handrails that allow the thumb and forefinger to form a complete circle are most effective. And replacing light bulbs is the least expensive way to reduce home falls. And I'm done.
Karla, if you turn off your share screen, we'll see if there are any questions.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? If so, you can unmute your screen and just speak up.
Hi, this is Joe Duprat. You mentioned using contrast, but then you say don't use it excessively. Could you distinguish between good use of contrast and excessive use of contrast?
Yes, I can. How do I get back to sharing my screen?
Hit share screen again. I guess you better keep it there. The green
Okay.
icon.
Okay. Are you seeing, Joe, are you seeing that carpet? Does the carpet show it?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. This is not.
Your Karla, hit share screen again. It's the green icon on the bottom of your screen.
Okay, got it. Is this working? Okay, I'm not going to belabor this. There
Yeah,
was a
right.
slide.
Yeah,
Is
just-
it, is it there now? Okay. Joe, that's an example of excessive contrast right there.
I'm not seeing it.
Okay, it's in
So
when
yep. Just describe
Yeah.
for us. what the
very busy. Any kind of flooring that's very busy has like floral prints or jazzy patterns that can be very distracting and confusing to the eye. Sometimes contrast is good when it provides information like where the edges are in a room. And if it's simple, but if it's overdone, it just visually busy, I guess, is the best way to explain when contrast goes amok.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'd just like to add that When I built my house 20 years ago, I put contrasting tape on the stairs into the garage. There were just 3 steps, but just right at the edge, I put white contrasting tape and it's still there, but it is really helpful. And just recently, now that duct tape comes in all sorts of colors, I've used some on my outside stairs. It looks really nice, but it's a little bit of a contrast to the paint color. So in the middle of the night or when I want to go out and watch the Northern Lights or something, it makes a huge difference to have the edges outlined.
Karla, grab bars need strong hip backing so that they actually support. How difficult is it to retrofit, say, a bathroom with to be able to carry the grab bars?
Well, if you're lucky, you get studs to anchor the grab bars into where you need to have the grab bars go. Sometimes you can adjust the length of the grab bar so that you're on studs. When that doesn't work, there are some very heavy duty hollow wall anchors. They're called wingets, and we bought like a whole case of them for the senior center when I was involved with that program. And they're very expensive, but way less expensive than if your grab bar pulls out of drywall. So you just have to be selective about the fastener for hollow wall anchors if you can't get into the studs.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question about exterior stairs, like up to a deck or something. Almost all of the ones I see just have something like a 2x6 sideways as the railing, and there's of course no way to get your hand around that. And I'm having trouble envisioning how you would replace that.
You could just, depending on the width, you could just attach handrails to that 2x6. That would be one way to do it. There are some federal guidelines out there, UFAS they're called, that actually have a routed like 2x6. It would just it's routed so there's a little indentation for fingers to go on. So some contractors will look at that and think they're good to go. But all the training that I've had and deep research on this shows that your hand should go completely around the rail. And just, I mean, if this is your situation and you want to fix it, just consider putting a handrail just on that 2x6.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have one question. I'd like to know what would be the best material to use over a ramp.
Ooh, boy, that's going to be, it depends on what the ramp surface is. There are ways to add sand, grit, or slip resistant paint on things to some ramps. I've seen indoor-outdoor carpeting, which is very high maintenance to increase resistance. It just kind of depends on what your ramp is. There also in commercial applications, people do use open grading. The places that I've seen that is a real hazard, especially if it's like steel grading for seniors. It creates so much resistance that they fall, and it's very abrasive on the skin. So I wouldn't go that route. There's just a number of solutions, but it just kind of depends on what the ramp is composed of.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we'll go back to Jonathan. Thank you, Karla.
Mhm.
Jonathan, can we hear from you again?
Sure, you can. Let me share my slide. Okay. Can you see my slide there?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then, is it moving? Just testing to make sure.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go very quickly because some of these I've already talked about, the causes of falls, which is declining physical fitness, surgical procedures, and medical issues, weather, and environmental and architectural issues, which Karla almost talked about. The statistics, you guys have those already. And in my perspective, the way I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it from the perspective of Americans with Disability Act, because that's, as an architect, that's what I focus on, and trying to make spaces more accessible from a design perspective. So yeah, I'm just we talked a little bit, and also Kara already also mentioned some of the issues there. Medications, and I was talking that surgical issues, hip replacement, one of the main causes for people having falls, which I think you guys, you've heard from a lot of people already this week, as well as include medications. And please forgive me if I'm moving too fast here. Just want to try to get to some power slides which I hadn't talked about. And I think one of the major issues we have for falls, I mean, this has to do primarily on the outside, and people are mentioning also on ramps, is in Alaska, we do get snow and ice, and mainly snow and ice are the main cause of falls. And, there was a question just raised about what material is best for ramps, and really commercially, I mean, you could do with plywood, but I would not plywood, kind of as just mentioned, it's not a good material. You need something that is stable, with that you can put in. There's a lot of various materials you can use that are available on the market. But the areas where people do have a lot of falls, when I am looking from an ADA perspective, is starting from from wherever you're parking your driveway. That's a very common area where people do have falls, and then entrances. If you have transitions between your outside and the inside, sometimes that transition is not designed well, or is not constructed well, and wheelchairs or feet do get caught in that area trying to make that transition, and that can be a cause of falls. As already mentioned, stairways and ramps are also another reason for falls. And I know there was also a question about handrails. From an architectural perspective, there are standards on that are required to make sure that handrails are appropriate, and that has to do with the size of the handrail and the height of the handrail, as well as the attachment, how there are minimum requirements to make sure that that handrail can support the weight of most people. And those are the things I would be looking for as an architect when I'm designing, or if I'm working on somebody who needs help with handrails. And handrails are also, you find them in bathrooms and showers, as well. The same issues having to do with the weight for handrails and grab bars. You have to make those, you have to design those appropriately to be able to support the weight when people use them. I think it's already been mentioned that poor lighting condition is a cause of falls. So when you nowadays, on Amazon, most of you you can buy a little light meters. You can use it to measure the light meter to make sure that you have good light levels in your spaces on your house, and they are not very expensive. I'm thinking probably less than $20. You can buy a light meter and if you check online in what is a good light meter, there are a lot of articles online on what is a good light levels, and you can adjust that to what you want to use. And most light bulbs you buy, if you read the box carefully, you will see that they indicate the level of light that you can get. Usually it's expressed, they can express it in terms of kelvins, the heat, and that just tells you how bright those lights are, or how it's a kind of a scale from being looking almost as being daylight to, so the higher the Kelvin it is, the more daylight you will get from a typical light, and that's in all incandescent as well. If you are still using incandescent or LED lights, they still have that. It's indicated on the outside the box of the lights bulbs you buy. Certainly, clutter in your house, wet floors, bathrooms, that's a cause of falls, as well as general disrepair. And there was a mention of carpet and carpet material, and if your carpet is not secure or loose, if it's not repaired or replaced, that certainly can cause falls. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip a little bit because carpet has been talked a lot. And I think there was a mention on what can be done. There are a lot, from my perspective, there's a lot of, these are some of the laws that professionals or designers and contractors need to be aware to be able to help you. They establish a lot of standards that are used in the design for buildings. Certainly the biggest one is the Americans with Disability Act, and as well as if you are within the city of Fairbanks, the city building department uses the ANSI A117 to do to review and do building inspections. So, but if you're not outside of and this primary is used for buildings which are 4 plexes and above. But the city, I'm pretty sure if you talk to the city inspectors and the city examiners, they will be more than willing to look at any plans you have, even though it's not a 4-plex, to make sure that people have buildings that are accessible. And most of these, fair housing, it refers to people who live in apartments or complexes with more than 4 units. That's what I would be looking. Usually, that's what I deal with for people who are doing commercial work. But and this also applies to if you live in a unit, and that unit is in a complex with more than 4 units, that there are requirements for making sure that the building is designed well to meet ADA and Fair Housing Act. This is kind of just a quick introduction to Americans with Disability Act. Is really these are what the priorities that I look for, that the price that Americans with disabilities is looking for is to make sure that first the approach and access to all buildings is designed appropriately, and then you have access to goods and services, and then priority 3 being public restrooms and bath showers and restrooms, and as well as the 4th priority is making sure drinking fountains and public telephones, which nowadays for most people don't use public telephones. Just as I mentioned previously, that the ADA is a civil law, so most owners, and that requires anybody who lives in an apartment, which is like, again, with 4 units and above, are required to follow the ADA. So there shouldn't be any excuse from any owner that their property is not compliant. And this also applies to any restaurants or shops you go, they have to be compliant. And just talking a little bit about the Fair Housing Act, I think most people think of Fair Housing Act as providing equal housing to people for all economic levels, but a part of Fair Housing Act is, from the design perspective, it also makes that spaces are available to people with disabilities or people with both temporary or permanent disability. So that's another part of the Fair Housing Act that most people may not be aware of. And I think most of you probably have heard about universal design, and the only difference with ADA and Fair Housing Act and universal design is that universal design is not a law. It's a voluntary standard that most designers and other people have decided that is the best way to make spaces accessible. And I do look at that when I am designing spaces, or if somebody is needing help to make their space accessible. I'm just gonna skip this a little bit because I don't think it applies. Yeah, from my what I look for to trying to make spaces, it's like, what are the solutions? Really, the solutions for me to prevent falls is to make sure that people are educated about the law, about ADA, Fair Housing Act, and when you get your projects done, when you're hiring a contractor or a designer, ask them if they know about Americans with Disability Act or the Fair Housing Act, and that will ensure they provide an environment that's safe for most homeowners. And the challenge is that the ADA was, it's a law which was it's a 1990s law, so most of the buildings which were built before 1990s may not be accessible. But if somebody does, if a major renovation was done after 1990, they should have upgraded that building to become ADA compliant. And really, from the way I look at it, it's education, is educating people on the civil ADA as a civil law is the best way to prevent falls. if yeah, I think that's all I have. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Jonathan or for Karla?
Jonathan,
Yes.
I'm thinking about the handrails for steps.
Uh-huh.
What's the appropriate height? I understand it would be relative to the average user, but is it ankle high, hip high,
Yeah,
shoulder
usually.
high?
Oh, sorry. Usually it's between 34 and yeah, 34 inches to. That's the usual height for the handrail. And so as you on the steps or as in the ramp, so that height should be moving up or down with the as you're going up or down.
Would you not necessarily look at the standard if you were designing for someone's individual home? Would you not look more at their height, especially if you had a very tall or a very short person?
Well,
I understand if you're building those fourplexes for rentals and that kind of thing, but would you not look at not just universal design, but individual design for
you
in-home?
yeah, you do. You know, the reason for most things in the ADA, there's a range. So usually you would say 34 to 38 inches for handrails. So definitely I would look at the the height of the person and make sure that you design appropriately to their height or their body, their size of their body. Because a lot of research has been done on ADA and they keep making improvements. The standards there, I would say for my years of being an architect for more than 30 years, I have not seen a situation where it does not fit the need for most people. Yeah. And certainly the general idea of ADA, even though it does not apply to single family homes, I think the reason that was done, it's a financial reason. I think when the law was put in place, I think the idea was that same idea will spread around to making houses accessible. There's nothing that say you couldn't do it in any single family homes.
Jonathan, you could stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
But I have a question maybe for both of you. ADA is a law and a lot of good things, and you refer to that, but also universal design. And so there are obviously other things that have come up since ADA was developed. Are there ways that you both or either of you would suggest changing ADA at this point from your experience?
From my, yes, there are things that ADA can certainly do to change, and they keep changing. I think most of the changes right now in the ADA are in the portion of the ADA that has nothing to do with the physical barriers. It has to do with employment, because a big portion of ADA has to do with employment. Right now, I just attended a conference where ADA, they're talking about how do you deal with COVID and ADA. So that's the trend. ADA is making changes. On the design, things are quite stable on the design portion of ADA, and as the building codes, because every 3 years the building codes do change, and portions of the ADA and this, what the city uses change also about every 3 years.
So local, state, and municipalities can improvise on the ADA or add different requirements?
N- If they, yes, if they have the power, if they want to do, but most of them do not. What they do is they take the ADA and just say, this is what the law we're gonna implement. Because I think for them to do that, it's a lot of time and effort on their part. So they usually just adopt what the ADA has said, and they go ahead with that. You know, there are states like California has their own ADA, which is very different from any other state, but that's unique to California. All the other states use the same standard for ADA.
We're getting close to 5 o'clock, and we do have one more question from the chat room. And that is, it's probably for Karla. Are there contractors who will come to inspect residences and be paid to make repairs? This is to take care of some of the modifications that Karla mentioned.
As some of you know, I've been working to set up a program with the Fairbanks Senior Center, a home modification program. We've been working on it for 3 years. And in June, we turned it over to a 21-year-old Lathrop High School graduate who wants to be a contractor. Part of that program is going out and inspecting jobs and seeing what can be done to do the hands-on work. Occupational therapists are another good source of assessment, and then they would then work with your contractor to make sure that what you need is what the contractor installed, and they would also do a quality control or follow-up to make sure that the handrails are at the right height, that things are within your grasp, that all of the things that are done are to your benefit. So I think keep your eye on the senior center is a short answer. Eventually, that program will get to where they will be able to do the assessment, and even now are able to do some of the actual repairs. And I see Bonnie's on this, so I don't know if she wants to update us. Bonnie Lowe, she was on here. I don't know if she can tell us where that program stands, but. Oh, there she is, yeah.
Is Bonnie on?
Somebody might have to unmute her.
She will have to unmute herself. Bonnie, can you hit the unmute button?
Barbara, I asked the question wondering whether there's, just as you can call in and for an energy audit, I was wondering whether there's a way to call someone, a local contractor, or if Aging at Home has a list of contractors to call who would come in and sort of say, well, these are the things that we think you need, and we're prepared to fix these problems for $10,000. That was the purpose of the question. I figured that if I'm going to get into trouble tripping over somebody's stairs getting into a fourplex, I'll sue them, and so I don't have to worry about that. I'm worried about what I can do with my own residents.
Thanks, Joe. We really would like to start a program like that for Aging at Home Fairbanks members, where we could get a team of people to inspect your house and just point out the things that need to be done. I know that it's very easy to not see things in your own house. We had to be told by Karla, that we needed rails on both sides of the staircase and various things like that. So having inspection by somebody else outside is really a good idea. And I hope we can work on it, possibly with the senior center.
Thank you.
Any last minute questions? We're just about at our ending time. If not, thank you to Karla and Jonathan. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.